a conversation with Nick Herbert in Boulder Creek, which is in California, in the back of a very nice coffee shop and amidst the woods of Boulder Creek. Very old trees, very new understanding, talking with Nick Herbert. Nick Herbert, writer of quantum physics, but more of one of the street sweepers of Boulder Creek in California.
And premier innovator in the field of consciousness research.
Yeah, but it's very important to stress that sweeping the streets is where we start.
You have to start at the bottom, and one of the big features of quantum tantra is that you start at the bottom. So we want to be as low as possible, down among the slime, the primeval slime. Mm-hmm.
Does that mean going to a very small scale, or does that mean going back in time?
No, it means the degraded. To mean the lowest in all senses. Not only small, but degraded and simple and disgusting and everything repulsive.
I think we have to start explaining what Tantra is, because now quantum physics these days most people understand. It has to do with the fact that nature comes in quantized in finite elements.
Yes.
At a very deep level, there is no maybe, it is either yes or no. A little atomic particle or subatomic particle is having this energy or that energy, but that's it.
Right, broken up into little parts and secondarily uncertain as to what the next step is going to be. So uncertainty and quantization are two of the aspects of quantum mechanics.
Okay, and you're a physicist and you wrote books about it, and it's all very complex. But now the new thing for you is that you look into Tantra.
I'm connecting this with human sexuality. And the biggest mystery in quantum theory is how do things happen, is how does this world come from potentiality into actuality.
Which means if you look into those physics equations that say this is the potentiality of this, but then if you look at a certain particle, it is plus this or that.
It's waves of possibility when you don't look, particles of actuality when you do look. And the mystery in quantum physics is that we don't know what looking is. That's the mystery of quantum physics. Now, the mystery of Tantra, of human sexuality, is what do you do next? Given a situation, where do you move it to? What causes that to happen? It's so in consciousness, what to do next is a real mystery. In physics, what happens next is the real mystery. So quantum Tantra marries these two mysteries together.
Okay, now I'm a simple guy.
How the world happens.
The link I see is that sexuality, you're either male or female, you're either a 0 or a 1, whatever, but there is a duality, you have to have a choice. Well, there's people in between, but most of the times you are either male or female. Particles are either, they have a spin to the left or a spin to the right or have this energy level. So that's the similarity. But what's the difference? I mean, and for me, Tantra is part of the Buddhist tradition. For me, has a feeling about polarity. You go to the extremes.
Activity and passivity is whether you let yourself be done to or whether you do. And Tantra is a kind of a dance between activity and passivity, where you relax on being you're done to and you then do. We take on both these parts, male and female, no matter what our genders. And Tantra is a dance between passivity and activity. And now, in quantum theory, there's the observer and the observed. Mm-hmm. We like to think that we are always the observer. But in my extension of quantum theory, I think we're going to have to take turns. We're going to have to find ways of letting nature observe us, of being passive and let nature enter our bodies. This is a new way of interacting with nature that so far is different.
Bring that into my experiences sometimes when I've taken LSD around these mountains. I have the feeling that, I'm looking at the mountains, but the mountain is conscious looking at me. At that moment in time when I feel that I am looking at something and I'm receptive to, this other thing and I'm not having a projection about it like we normally have, but like with LSD you might have entered that state. Hey, this thing is looking back to me. And
that's exactly right. Drugs are the first premonition of quantum tantra. They're a crude stone axe in the technology of quantum tantra. We don't know how drugs work. The reason I say they're crude is because we've stumbled upon them accidentally. Because we don't know how consciousness works, we don't know how drugs work. In the future, we'll be able to design better drugs. So your connection with the mountain coming into you, will be like the difference between a paperclip and a computer. That's what I think. So I believe that drugs really are, certain drugs, are a way of letting nature enter us. A way of lying back and letting the mountain observe you or the plants observe you. But it's just the beginning. We need two things. We need better drugs, of course, but we need a theoretical underpinning for this, and that's what I hope to provide.
Yeah, but isn't that there? I mean, I wrote under the influence of a drug and sitting on that mountain one Tamalpais, I wrote, between me and the mountain, there's but God to enjoy. Now, later someone said, oh yeah, but that's very Sufi. You have the observer and the observed, and then there is this third entity that encompasses all, which is God. We don't know whether God looks at us or we're looking at God, we're creating good, but there's a triangle.
Yes.
Yeah, and that is long before the idea of quantum tantra or quantum physics. This is a Sufi idea that comes from the 5th or the 6th century.
Oh, we'll be doing it long before we understand what we're doing, and we are doing it long before we understand. I think this is going on all the time, except we have no theoretical underpinning for it. We have no words. Poetry comes the closest to describing this at the moment, but what I would like is something that goes beyond poetry. Poetry also, in addition to describing it, is a way of doing it. That is, one opens oneself to the muse and is penetrated by this spirit that brings forth words. So poetry is a kind of experiment with nature, a very restricted experiment because it's only words that come out, and passion too.
But they have great power.
Yes, they have, and the proof of this experiment is the power of those words. If you produce, shitty poetry, you didn't do a good experiment. But if you have poetry that moves yourself and other people, then the experiment was successful. You've contacted the muse.
Okay. Now, this is being written down by writers and philosophers all through the ages. But these days, we have books like the one you have from Dean Radin.
The most important book of the century, by the way.
Well, show it. Conscious Universe.
This is the,
yeah?
The Conscious Universe. Finally, we have an experiment that refutes the materialist model of mind, just like that. Yeah. People are wondering whether the mind is created by the brain. Now we know that that's not so.
Okay. But what I want to go to is like, in the old days we would call it the muse, but this guy talks about Ganzfeld experiments, and he says, okay, let's assume there is a field. Other people talk about morphogenetic fields or whatever, but there is something where all this unexplainable relationship between conscious and unconscious.
He's not a theorist. He's an experimentalist. He's done an experiment that basically refutes mental materialism. He doesn't have any models either, but he realizes how important...
It refutes mental materialism, which is...
The brain produces consciousness. That simple.
That there is a meat computer in there that creates whatever we...
Self-awareness, yeah. That all it takes is this machinery that... All it takes is matter in the proper configuration, and you'll get mind.
That's like Marvin Minsky's idea of the meat computer.
That's right, yeah.
And that implies that we could recreate it in silicon and therefore recreate man.
Yeah, well, that's wrong now.
So this guy says it's wrong.
Has an experiment that proves it's wrong.
Tell me about the experiment.
Well, it's a parapsychology experiment. And usually parapsychology experiments fall in 4 classes. There's telepathy, clairvoyance, and PK, psychokinesis. What you want to do to have an experiment that refutes mental materialism is to show there's something that the mind can do that no conceivable machine can do. Got that? No conceivable machine. Telepathy. Let's suppose telepathy. Me communicating with you. Mm-hmm. Telephone looks like telepathy. Mm-hmm. One mind communicating with a distant mind. So that's something a machine can do. Clairvoyance, looking at some other distant place. Video cameras can do that. So clairvoyance isn't a good experiment to show that. PK, psychokinesis, influencing a matter by distant. I can go down to Radio Shack and buy a radio-controlled car. So none of these experiments will refute mental materialism. But Dean Radin has an experiment that will.
Which is?
Oh. Backwards in time influences.
Backwards in time, not forwards. Wait a minute. Forwards in time is if I destroy this table, it will be destroyed in the future.
Yes. Well, this is something that occurs in the future that has influence right now. So a fact in the future, an emotional fact in the future, influences what happens right now. It's an experiment he calls autonomic presentiment. It's a very simple experiment. And
autonomic presentiment, pre-feeling.
Yes, pre-feeling. Autonomic, which refers to the autonomic nervous system, the unconscious nervous system. Autonomic presentiment, AP. Horrible name. I would call it the Radin effect. The Radin effect. He did this at the University of Nevada in Las Vegas. It works this way. Is this book?
Because this is his book. Otherwise, you don't know. Dean Radin. Yes, he works with.
He used to work at the University of Nevada in Las Vegas, and when this book came out, I called him the Galileo of modern psychic research, because he was. I think this is going to be the physics of the 21st century. And just as Galileo started the physics of our known physics, and then Newton took over, these are the first experiments of a new science, a science we've never ever even touched on.
Mm-hmm. Now, so come back to the experiment.
But another thing that happened to Galileo was that the Inquisition got on his ass. Well, that's what happened to Radin. As soon as he published his book, he was fired.
From the university?
From the university, yes. Cute. I didn't expect that. The experiment is this way.
You actually wrote to the dean of the university saying, "Well, are you crazy or what?"
No, I said, "Do you guys want to go down? Do you guys want to go down in history like Cardinal Bellarmine and the Pope? Well, that's what you're doing. That's what's going to happen here." I wrote to the dean of the university, the president of the university, and the governor of the state of Nevada, saying this. These people don't care. These bullshit administrators.
So what is the experiment?
They're playing their part. The experiment is this. You have a collection of pictures. There are hot pictures and there are cold pictures. The hot pictures are pornography and mutilated corpses, and the cold pictures are scenery and flowers and such and such. And they're divided into these two classes. And there's a computer in the lab. You push a button, and 5 seconds after you push this button, the picture is going to appear, and you're supposed to guess whether it's going to be a hot picture or a cold picture. Mm-hmm. So, and there's a set amount of pictures, maybe 50 pictures that are going to occur. Mm-hmm. You push the button, and 5 seconds later, a picture pops up on the screen, and you're supposed to guess whether it's a hot or cold picture, and people can't. But you're wired up, with blood volume.
You mean people cannot say this is going to be that kind of picture? It doesn't come to the conscious level.
The conscious mind. We're talking about autonomic nervous system, the unconscious nervous system. So people Dean Radin has wired them up with measuring three physiological variables: heart rate, blood volume, and galvanic skin response. So the lie detector kind of thing. A 3-channel physiological measure. And this is going on simultaneously while you're trying to guess these things. So it turns out that about 2 seconds before the picture is even chosen,
before the computer made a decision what picture is going to be...
That's right. Before the computer makes a decision, the physiology of the person is already going off the scale for the hot picture. For the cold picture, it just goes... And this... So
so what you're saying is the body on a subconscious level feels what's going to happen.
Yes,
so you defy time. But when even people like Albert Einstein said, time is an illusion. It's part of an equation like we can move through space. Time is really manageable. And if you take people through space at a high enough speed, you will get shrinkage of time and extension of time. So
but not backwards in time.
Not backwards. Oh.
Not backwards. This is backwards in time. That something in the future, an event, a hot picture, is influencing a person's physiology now, 2 or 3 seconds before that hot picture is going to occur. This is backwards in time. Now,
let me take this. If that works, then it might be true that if I go to Las Vegas and 2 or 3 seconds before the ball rolls, if I had myself wired the right way, I could predict where it's going.
Well, you want a binary decision. You want black and white. You don't want numbers.
Okay, but take
Yeah.
a binary decision. I mean,
Yeah.
the role, you could say, well...
Maybe. I mean, if that's a strong enough emotion for you, you could do this. You could do this.
Is it an accident that a guy came from Las Vegas?
Probably not. Nothing. There's no accidents.
So that's a practical thing. You say not knowingly, but on a deeper level,
Yes.
we feel our body responds to future
Remember,
events.
you only have 2 seconds, so you may not have enough time to make a bet.
Well, you can place it from the red to the black thing.
No, they have a cutoff time. So probably 2 seconds is not enough to win on the roulette wheels, but it might be enough to win on certain games of chance, like slot machines, for instance. I don't know. This has not been tried that way. I think that the theoretical,
wait.
the theoretical implications of this are more important than
Yeah, but the
the
theoretical
practical ones.
implication is if you can feel it 3 seconds ahead, you can feel it maybe on a lower level, on a deeper level, less clear.
It doesn't seem to be so.
15 minutes before.
They haven't. It does seem to be that in this experiment, 2 or 3 seconds is the
cutoff time.
Yeah. But it's very strong. It's not. We're not talking about teeny little effects that you only see by statistics. These are very strong effects. It's a very robust effect and very strong. That's another difference from the usual parapsychology experiments.
I have something that pops to mind. Lately, for the past few years, I'm driving, and sometimes you escape a situation, so a near accident. And at that moment, it's as if a film in my mind rolls, and I see the accident happen.
Yeah.
But I saw it coming, so I know. Oh, Jesus, I just missed this one.
Radin proposes that this is a general feature of human beings
That we
that
anticipated.
We've always had this. We'd always had this sense, and it's helped us a lot in evolution.
Yes, I mean, for me in the car, it helps me a lot because things don't happen.
It helps to know when a tiger is going to jump out of the bush.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, and yes, I have that feeling, but I never thought it was about presentiment going back in time. But so maybe that is. So maybe many people have this experience.
Everyone.
Yeah, I'm not special.
Actually, he was able to show it for about 60% of the people, and that 60% of the people manifested a very strong effect in this experiment, and 40% didn't. So again, that's highly robust. You get a lot of people, more than half, that can do this. This is a rather artificial kind of experiment. It's not a tiger jumping out of a bush or an automobile.
No, but the thing is that I
actually
tried to relate it to my personal.
I remembered when I first learned to drive. I was driving along, and I drove onto railroad tracks, and I suddenly, for some reason, decided to back up. I backed up, and a train went right in front of me.
Yeah,
if I were to go on that track, I mean, why would I do that? It was one of the strangest experiments of my life.
Well, we know that now. So that this is in a way, this defies physics. The law of
physics.
Well, you happen to be a physicist.
Yeah, that's the entire our entire understanding of the physical world is based on physics, and this defies physics. It has to do with mind.
Yeah, but hasn't religion always done that?
Oh, who cares about religion? We're not in a religious age. This is a scientific age. We believe in science as our guide to truth.
Yeah, but it could be if this is true that religion had more of a reality basis
They're
than we
have
assume.
to fight their way back if they want, into our club.
This is California.
But the bottom line is that this experiment refutes mental materialism. That all those guys like Marvin Minsky and Daniel Dennett and Patricia Churchland who say that the mind is just a collection of what neurons do are fucking wrong.
But then, just
It's
one
an
step ahead.
important
Does it mean that
experiment.
if we die, that there is that the system goes on?
I don't have an idea what happens when we die. This is a first experiment. This is not the last experiment. We don't. But this opens the whole door to speculations like that. To what happens when we die. What is the connection between our subjective experience and the brain? What is it? I mean, we don't know. This opens up more mysteries than it solves. But it does answer one question definitively: the brain does not cause consciousness. The central belief of our culture, of our scientific culture, is wrong. And you know what the response has been to this?
No.
Nothing. No one cares.
Yeah, but when Einstein in 1906 wrote his stories about relativity, it took quite a while before we were able to make atomic bombs.
That's true. No one cared about Einstein either until he began pushing pushing people's buttons. So it takes a little while, but I really am surprised that no one's. Every year or so in Tucson, there's a conference on consciousness. A Tucson conferences on consciousness. There's been three of them so far. I think maybe three, maybe two. And Dean Radin presented this paper. You think these are people who really be interested in consciousness, not the ordinary run-of-the-mill people. Absolutely fell flat. No one paid any attention to this experiment.
But the same happened to Rupert Sheldrake, who came up with his ideas of the morphogenetic field and experiments about pigeons who have similar things. Mm-hmm. He had also the experiment of people being stared at. Radin did similar experiments with television and monitors.
Yes, exactly.
But
no one cares.
Nobody cared. Even in the magazine Nature kind of banned Rupert Sheldrake's books too and said we should burn them. Yeah.
This book got a terrible review in Nature. The guy basically accused him of fraud and bad statistics.
But that has always happened, and it seems that the field of psi, of extraordinary sensitivity, has always been, it's unrepeatable. Therefore, it's
This is not unrepeatable. It's very repeatable. But what this means is that all those guys who believe in mental materialism are just going to be left behind in the dust. And the few of us who believe in other things, will do all the good experiments. It's as simple as that. Those people are just out of it. They're out of the game. Now, there's a lot of good stuff one can do in conventional neurophysiology. There's no doubt about that. The mind, the brain definitely has something to do with the mind. It alters our consciousness and there's a lot of good experiments to do that. But the crucial experiment, does consciousness depend on the brain? The answer is no. I mean, fundamentally not, anyway.
Now, that's a new starting point. Now, back to you, because you are taking the idea of quantum physics that you explained in your previous books onto a level. You've written or you're writing a book called Alice in Quantum?
Alice in Quantum Land, yes.
Is that a popularization of quantum physics, or is this a new venue?
This is the book someone else is doing, and I'm just contributing some chapters. It's the idea, the premise of the book is that Alice and Dodson, Lewis Carroll, due to a combination of his particularly quirky masculinity and her naive femininity and burgeoning sexuality, managed to travel through time from the 1860s into our time and into quantum land. So she and he experienced both our own modern world and the world beyond. And so these are stories about that. It's a way of popularizing quantum mechanics. It hasn't had anything new, although for the first time there is quantum Tantra is mentioned, because I believe that's one of the physics of the future. Mm-hmm. In this case,
now, do you believe that the origins of Tantra, which was a part of the Buddhist tradition, going back very far, bringing people in extreme situations, not only sexuality but also like death, meditation on the corpse? For me, it always has been a way to really open yourself to the wider reality.
To reality, yes.
Not making judgments. It's like when people talk about sex in Tantra, they see, oh, it's nice, flowers and stuff like that. For me, it was more like you have to open to the next person and their full, whatever they are, without any judgments.
And flowers and something. Sex and death are very strongly related, I think. I think when you open yourself up to the other, are you opening yourself up to the death of yourself? Because
you give up the ego.
Well, I don't know about giving up the ego, but make no mistake, this world has not been constructed for your benefit. This world has been constructed to kill you. It's going to murder you, and no doubt, that's the most certain thing in the world, that this is going to kill me, and I have to embrace that. That's part of Tantra. Kali, the dark goddess, as certain as anything. This is a death world.
But these are very old ideas. Maybe they go back to 500 years before Christ with the Buddhism, but maybe they go back even more in the Hinduistic, in the Upanishads, in the Vedas, where, for instance, the idea of time is totally different from ours. The old Hindus had an idea that the universe, we're here for hundreds of millions of years, and the Kali Yuga is only, that the one we're in is only one part of it. But from their stories, you would guess that consciousness or the human beings have been there for eons and eons, hundreds of millions of years.
Yes, that's part of quantum Tantra too, is that one of the biggest mistakes that we've made in our culture is to underestimate the amount of consciousness in the universe, the amount of mind, the amount of sentience that's right in this moment that we're embedded in. That the medievals thought that was just the Earth.
A geocentric,
only
we
one
are the
planet,
center of the universe.
and there was just heaven above and hell below, and that's it. They missed all the billions and billions of planets and galaxies and things that we.
But the Hindus did not.
The Hindus did not, but the Hindus also talked about the different kinds of minds there were in the universe, which we don't think. We just think, well, myself and you and our dogs and cats, and that's about it, But I'd like to, I'm a believer in panpsychism, that everything is conscious, that there's a sense in which mind permeates the universe in some kind of boiling stew that we're in, and it's all conscious in some particular way.
So you're
and my goal is to contact this.
Yeah.
The goal, as a physicist, I would like to connect my mind to that, and I think drugs do this to some extent. They can connect us to other minds. But what I see quantum tantra is doing is leading to a physics where we could use physical instruments to connect my mind with the mind of nature, with other minds that are around us. We can put on flexible lycra garments that are shimmering with quantum possibility, and I can reach out and I can touch this metal and connect with all the metallic little minds that are inside that. And my mind will go into that metal, and their minds will go into me, and I won't be the same.
Yeah, but you see that as an artificial thing, and I see that as reality, because I think you are a shimmering body of quantum possibilities, and that metal does interact with you, and you interact with it, and it connects you to the earth, and I don't know what.
Yes,
but
well, we would be doing that explicitly now instead of implicitly. I mean, I believe that too, that is happening, but I don't have that experience as deeply as I could have with this device. Mm-hmm. And this device, in Alice in Wonderland, I call it TOVE. What does TOVE stand for? Something about vital energies, tactile observation of vital energies. I mean, these are vital energies. The consciousness of what we now call inanimate objects. I think are rich storehouses of inner experience that we are. William Blake said, "Who knows but every bird that cuts the airy way is an immense world of delight, closed to our senses five." And I think that's the kind of world we live in. That our intuition, our senses, our sensitivity is closed to most of what goes on in the world. Very important things are going on in the world that we're simply ignorant of.
Okay, practically, does that mean that a car you're driving has a mind of its own?
I don't know where to draw the line. Maybe the car is unconscious, but it is the locus.
The stone, the wood, the plants.
We don't know how to divide these things. A stone might not be conscious, but all the atoms might be. Just like what is conscious about you? Is it your body?
We just find out from the Book of Radin that my brain is not my consciousness. My consciousness is different from my brain.
Well, your physiology can do things. The autonomic nervous system could do things that your conscious mind cannot do. Apparently, we don't know where our minds are in our body or what other minds are in our body. It seems to me that what Radin's experiment says is that there is a mind in our body. It's not me that can do these things, because I can't do these things. That's another consequence of Radin's. In fact, now that I think of it, maybe that means that our consciousness is caused by the brain, because our consciousness isn't doing this. It's the physiology of the body that's doing this. I take back everything I said. Maybe Minsky is right.
This is California. This is where ordinary street sweepers and videographers like me and you and people that write books and think about things come to the conclusion: what is certainty?
What is certainty? What is mind? What is
matter? What is mind and what is matter? We were talking with Nick Herbert about quantum tantra and what's the influence of time and mind to each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Luke.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, what's that, Al?
What about biofeedback? What about if we know about our signals of our body consciously while we're being given this experiment?
Then we could get messages for the future, Al. It's as simple
Thank you.
as that.
That's what I wanted to know.
The only thing you need is one of those cars, those silver cars.
What is that?
The type of cars for Back to the Future?
Oh, DeLorean.
We have to buy a DeLorean. Maybe that has the consciousness of what we need.
Probably DeLoreans are more conscious than other cars.